Welcome to the latest Pinnacle Forum podcast on stewarding the influence that God has given you. This is a series of conversations with leaders who happen to be Christians. Many are fellow partners and are also currently involved in one of our forums. As leaders in our fields, we gain influence. We may think that our influence came because of our intellect, our looks, our luck, our personality, and it's for our own use. The reality is that God grants this for us to use in the advancement of His kingdom. These are the stories of people who are learning how to use that God-given influence in service to others and ultimately to God. We trust these will encourage you as you steward your own God-given influence. Now on to our discussion. I've got a special guest today. He's been on the podcast before, but he's got a story to tell that's going to knock your socks off about an experience that he had with his wife and a health issue and how she used the influence that God had given her in the hospital recovery room for the influence of the kingdom. Anyway, Sandy Wheeler, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
And why don't you start from the beginning? I think your wife was in the hospital, and tell the story you told me the other day.
Well, I will. And it all started the way she ended up in the hospital was last fall. We were mountain biking in a place called Winthrop, which if you've never been there, is absolutely stunningly beautiful. And she had a bike wreck, and I had to take her to ER all the way to Wenatchee, where we live. And when they got done with that, they came back and the doc said, well, everything's going to be okay. She's badly bruised. But we did see a couple little shadows on her pancreas that we think warrants further looking at.
Which you would have never seen, by the way, if she hadn't
That's
had
correct.
a mountain biking accident.
That's correct. And as everyone who's ever dealt with pancreatic cancer know, that the reason that is so deadly is usually by the time they discover it, it's too late.
Yeah.
And so Diana's dad, ironically, had died at the age of 65 from pancreatic cancer. So when the doctor came out and explained that, I took him aside and said, Diana's been having bouts of severe stomach pain. Do you think those two little marks on her pancreas could be causing that? And he said, there's a good chance that would happen. Long story short, they ended up following up, scheduling her for MRIs and all the medical stuff they're doing. As you can fathom in today's world, you don't just get that done tomorrow. Even though it was dealing with her pancreas, they didn't have like a massive urgency, but we got in on the scheduling and eventually they did that. And then they would come back and say, okay, well, now we do want to do biopsies. And this one biopsy of all the biopsies they did, it was to a special lab in Ohio. And I think we waited like 4 weeks to get the results back. And she had, in the larger cyst on her pancreas, she had the type of fluid that is guaranteed to turn to cancer if it leaks out. And I don't know how all that medically happens, but that was the word. So it didn't take us much of a deliberation to say, we should have that surgery. Met with a surgeon, a female gal, seems like she'd done a lot of those, told us how she would go in and operate. So the day of the operation, we check in and it was in the afternoon and met with the doc, and the doc came in and said, hey, everything's going to be great today. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do everything arthroscopically. And I said, well, how long's the surgery? She said, well, it's going to be about 4 hours and probably another hour in recovery. I said, okay, well, I could pray, but I think I'll go mountain bike riding. And I can pray and ride my mountain bike at the same time. So
there you go.
Anyway, I did do that. I headed to my favorite spot where I'm mountain biking and got up to the very top, and it was time to turn around.
Did your wife know that you were going to go mountain biking while she was in surgery?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I didn't keep it a secret.
All right. Continue.
I just told her, honey, I'm going to go mountain biking while you have surgery. I'll be here when you wake up.
Okay.
So anyway, on the way back down, the weirdest thing, and this has happened to me before, because throughout my life, I've recorded what I call the no doubt about it miracles in my life. and God has spoken to me, and I have questioned whether that was God, and it turned out to be God. So I do try to pay attention. I wish I would do it all the time, but I don't always catch it. But on this particular time, I'm zipping down this mountainside, and just out of the blue, I felt God say, Dinah's going to have extensive bleeding. I thought, what a weird statement. And that's all it was to it. Diana's going to have extensive bleeding. So I get to my pickup, and I'm now in cell phone zone. And sure enough, the surgeon had just called. So I call her back, and she said, well, everything went well with Diana. She had very little bleeding. We got everything done arthroscopically. There was one little hiccup, and that was we lost a needle on extraction. She said, so I used my instruments to try and move her organs around to find that needle. Couldn't find it. So I flooded her belly with water, hoping to float that needle to the top, but we couldn't find it. We didn't think it was worth opening her all up. It's just a little tiny, tiny needle. I've seen it before in residency. We don't think it's a big deal. Okay. Say, okay, that's fine. And she said she'll be out of surgery out of recovery here in about an hour. And I said, perfect, I'll be there. And she said, you can meet her over on the 4th floor of the hospital, and we'll go from there. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Okay. So I pop home, jump in the shower, have time, get down there. And it's past an hour, and I'm still waiting. It still shows her that she's in recovery. At an hour and 45 minutes, I go to the nurse and I say, well, my wife's been in recovery for an hour and 45 minutes, and I was of the understanding it would only be about an hour. She said, well, we can't let you go back there, and we don't get any information. It just shows she's still in recovery. I do have her room number. If you'd like to go up to the 4th floor, you can sit in her room till they bring her. I said, okay. So I pop up the 4th floor, and I'm waiting. 2.5 hours goes by, and then here she comes. I can tell from her laying in the bed, it was not good. The recovery was brutal. So I asked the nurse there, she said they had just given her a shot of pain medicine. They couldn't give it to her before she was so sick, heaving, probably from the water that was flooded in her belly. But the whole combination of moving all those organs. Anyway, we knew that was the issue because we had the anesthesiologist give her anti-nausea medicine when they put her under. And typically it'd be just an hour. She said like 2 words to me. I can't tell you what those 2 words were because she was out. And so I thought, well, I'll just head home. It's like 6:30 at night, and I'll see her in the morning. So I did that. 12:30 that night, or 12:30 actually, first thing in the morning, 12:30 a.m., I get a call, and it's a male surgeon. He said, hey, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I'm filling in for Dr. Straub, and I'm going to be taking good care of your wife. She went in to go to the bathroom, and she passed out, and I think she has extensive bleeding. The moment he said the words extensive bleeding, my brain went right to God's word. And I said, okay, God, that's exactly the 2 words you used. Mm-hmm. Diana is going to have extensive bleeding. He just used the same 2 words. So I thought, okay. So he says, we got the OR room lit up. Team's on its way. I'll call you when we're out of surgery. It's okay. So for the next 3.5 hours, I'm praying, mostly that God will just guide the surgeons. They'll find the bleeding and get her all fixed up. What he failed to tell me, and I always relate it because I'm an old guy, to Paul Harvey's The Rest of the Story. Mm-hmm. And he failed to tell me that she had coded blue twice, so she died from the bleeding. She had bled out. They gave her blood transfusions, and they kept her on life support throughout the next surgery. And I get down to the hospital. He calls me at 3:15. And so not quite 3 hours, but 3:15. Said surgery went well. He said, I found the needle. We got that extracted. I opened her up, her complete belly, and I took her spleen. He said the majority of the bleeding looked to me like it was a serration above that artery and a little vein that was squirting. And so we fixed all that up, and I think she will do well, and you can head down. So I did, and sure enough, an hour later, they wheeled Diana in. So it truly was an hour was the right time of recovery. This time, she's like chatty Cathy. One thing I noticed right off was her voice was really hoarse. And I said, well, what's the deal with her voice? I was asking the nurse, and he said, well, they had a tube down her while they did the second surgery. He still hadn't told me that they had her on life support. And then these ICU rooms down there, they have great big windows. And so I noticed this guy coming, and I know he's a doctor, but he's like 5'4", really scruffy hair. And I know he's a doctor because he has doctor scrubs on. But he pops in, goes right to Diana, says something to her. And I was still finishing up with the nurse. And then he turns to me and he said, hey, I'm Dr. Branch. I was one of the 2 doctors that saved your wife last night twice. And we kept her on life support throughout the surgery. And I said, what? He said, yeah, she coded blue twice and had to give her blood transfusions, and we kept her on life support. She was a real champion. I said, well, nobody told me that. But then I realized, so if they would have told me, maybe I would have had a little more anxiety. But other than that, there wasn't one thing I could do. I'm not a doctor. I couldn't have rushed into the operating room or done a thing. And so anyway, I'm talking with him as he's telling me this stuff. And then up pops Diana. And she said, yes, I did die twice. And by the way, I was just above you and the nurses while you worked on me. And his eyes literally got as big as a saucer. He said, what? He said, I can tell you everything you were saying. I was just above you. In fact, I was telling God that I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to Sandy, and I hadn't done a really good job on my Life's Final Thoughts video. And then Jesus said to me, he said, Diana, tonight you are not going to die. This event is for my glory. And it most certainly was, because everyone on ICU heard about this woman who told the doctors what they were saying while they were bringing her back to life on a code blue situation, verbatim.
So she's out, anesthetized on the operating table, and hovering above the doctor and hearing everything he's saying.
No, she was dead on the code blue, laying in her hospital bed before they took her back for the next surgery. And she's above them while she's dead. So they have her in a room. She goes to the room to go to the bathroom, but she was bleeding out. The nurse noticed all this blood coming out of the orthoscopic holes and this drain tube. That's how they went, whoa, did a code blue. Now the code blue team comes in, which that's where this other doctor came from, and she's above them. And that's when she's telling Jesus, I didn't get to say goodbye to Sandy, and I didn't do a really good job on my Life's Final Thoughts. Then she tells the doctor, I can tell you what you were saying. She does the same thing to the nurse when she gets out of ICU. They move her back to the 4th floor. The same nurse who's in charge of her was the nurse who was assigned to her on the first surgery when she was into recovery. And that nurse, it was interesting. I go to see Diana that night. I walk in the room. The nurse says, do you mind if I ask you a question? I said, well, of course not. She said, weren't you scared when the doctor called you to tell you that Diana had extensive bleeding? And I said, well, would you like to hear the whole story? She said, sure. So I told her the quick version of me mountain biking, being the faithful husband, out getting a little exercise while the wife is dealing with a pancreatic surgery. And I told her about God telling me on the way down, Diana has extensive bleeding. And then I said, so when I got the call from the doctor, he used the same words, extensive bleeding, for Diana. So then I knew that God was in charge no matter what. And no, I wasn't worried, but they didn't tell me she coded. And they didn't tell me they were giving her blood transfusions. They just said they were taking her to the OR. And so I prayed during that entire time. And then Diana comes into the conversation, and she again tells the nurse about her experience of being above them in the room while they're working on her to get her back to life. And the nurse turns and she said, "You are absolutely correct, because I was one of the nurses." And then we go on to just chit chat about things. And we were getting kind of done about wrapping that up. And she turned to Diana and said, "You know, Diana, when you get well, do you think I could sit down and have a cup of coffee with you and your husband?" And of course, we said we'd love to do that. So she is on our calendar to be able to do that. And I think, to me, Chuck, that just shows you never know. And you never know when you're going to stand up and witness for Jesus. And that was truly a no doubt about it miracle, that a bunch of doctors and nurses, because it spread throughout the fourth floor, this gal that's in room such, and she was brought back to life. And not only that, she told the doctors and nurses what they were saying. And so there was undeniable that Jesus is for very real. Otherwise, she couldn't have told them that story.
That's right, because she wouldn't have had the out-of-body experience. She would have just been.
No. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing, Sandy.
Yeah. Well, we serve an amazing God. I think that doesn't happen very often, though there's other stories of those things. But I think in our lives, and you know me fairly well, I've shared some of my not so great or not so comforting miracles of how God cares about us and loves us so very much that he pretty much doesn't want anything to slide that assures us of our race being complete and us finding heaven as our home. And I think the thing with Diana, where she was talking to me later about, she said, "I wasn't crying when I said, Lord, I didn't get to say goodbye to Sandy, and I didn't do a good job on my life's final thoughts." She said, but it was immediately that Jesus spoke to her and said, "Diana, tonight you are not going to die, but this event will be for my glory." And it spread throughout that hospital, undeniable. And she was there for a whole week. And I mean, when I'd walk in, you'd have thought I was a celebrity star, because every eye would be glued on me, because they knew I was the husband of this gal that told the doctors and nurses what happened when she died.
Amazing.
Just a story.
Well, you got another story to tell. We're going to catch up with that. We have heard from you about the things that you're developing, and we were calling it chapters at the time. You referred to Diana recording My Life's Final Thoughts.
Yes.
Talk about that.
So going clear back to the chapters, which was a whole platform designed for terminally diagnosed patients, but mainly cancer patients. And it was a whole platform designed to take stress out of life. But the differentiator of everything else was this silo that allowed you to record archival videos so that your voice, your personality, and your messages would be preserved for generations. And so when I realized I couldn't get that nonprofit, the kind of money that was necessary for that whole platform, I carved out the silo and went to work on building that silo and getting a group of friends to invest along with me to see if we could make the prototype. And usually and when you start something like that, it's called a minimum viable product that you're after to produce. Our product that we just launched is way more than a minimum viable product. It is so cool and very easy. We only have it for Apple iPhones right now, but we are not very far off from having it for Androids. And we called it Life's Final Thoughts because we felt that it would be a great one to launch, because everybody from the time they are born are running a race. And at some point, we all realize that race does come to an end. The only thing is that's challenging for us humans is we don't know the day nor the hour in which that race is going to finish. And those that are left behind deal with the grief. And sometimes in the situation, one of the first things that goes away when a person dies is your voice. And our goal was to have a situation in which you could create time capsules that would be stored. And on this one here, Life's Final Thoughts, activation date would happen the day you die. And the idea of this is for you to share life's final thoughts. Everybody has a story to tell about their life. And what's great that I believe on this is when you get to the funeral, what is so cool to me is that it will be you telling your story instead of somebody standing up and saying, well, I want to pass on what Chuck was all about and what Chuck cared about. It's Chuck telling everybody. And so instantly in my heart was the deal that said, for every Christian, we should want to record that video if we do no other video. And it becomes activated and gets dispersed upon your death, whenever that happens. And the idea is to play that at your memorial or funeral and allow you to share your life's final thoughts of what you would share if God said to you, hey, Chuck, tomorrow's your last day. Love for you to prepare a speech to all those who are going to be in attendance. That's your family, your loved ones, and those who care about you. So it's no one else telling that story, it's you. Well, when I did mine, I said, Lord, one of the things that's very critical to me is my relationship with you. And so at the end of mine, I tell everybody about how I got saved. And I just simply say, would you guys mind doing me one more favor? And of course, being an old direct marketing guy, they will say mentally, before you explain what it is, they'll say, yes.
Sure, Sandy, anything for you.
Anything.
I'm emotional and I'm open to suggestion.
Yes. And so what I did is I told him about my relationship with Jesus. And I said, if you do me a favor, I'm going to say this prayer. And it would just honor me beyond belief if you felt led to follow me after that prayer. And I'm going to do that right now. And then when I finish up, I say, if you did that, would you just tap one of my family members and say, hey, I just did what your dad asked me to do or your husband asked me to do. And they'll give you a little bit of direction about where to go from here. But I thought about that, Chuck, if just in all the funerals that ever happened, what if just one person in that funeral goes, his message or her message was so good, I want that. And that's called evangelism. Mm-hmm. And for me, I have 5 children, 3 natural, biological, and 2 that are adopted. The 2 that are adopted went to Young Life, had all the rah-rah, said they were going to slay the world for Jesus, but they're not remotely walking with him now. And I just think, what if when they see this video and I'm gone, yet I'm still there, and I tell them, if there's one thing that you could do for me, it'd be to have Jesus come into your heart. Now, you or I can't save anyone, but the Holy Spirit's quite capable of touching people's heart. And I'm sure you're like me. I wished all my friends were Christians, but they're not. And there will be some friends who will attend our funerals who aren't Christian. And there'll be probably some friends who will attend that may be lukewarm or close to the line. And maybe our words of sharing our life and what things were important, our wives, our grandchildren, our love for them, the telling of stories, and then you finish up with the most important thing in the entire earth, and that is your relationship with your personal Savior, Jesus. And it's just powerful. And I've seen some now, a young guy who's he's only 30, 32, sent me a sample of his video. And I told him, I said, if you were my son or my grandson, I'd be beaming for joy. You did such a great job. Well, they have a little boy I think he's only around 2.5. His video message was 10 minutes and 57 seconds long. and was unbelievable. What a message. And if you're sitting there and you're one of his friends and you aren't saved, there's a good chance you would want to give your life to Christ after his message is done. So that's just the first of many time capsules we're going to have in this. And we kind of made it a one price. We did $29.99. One-time price gives you the tool to create multiple time capsules in your life. And time capsules don't have to just be for end of life, such as life's final journey. They can be for anniversaries. What if you made a video recording when you're thinking about it for your wife, for your wedding anniversary? And what if you went back and told her the story of when you first laid eyes on her and how it led you to the point of where you said, would you marry me? Do you think that's a present that would be unusual and something really great, less than the cost of a Walmart card? Well, yeah, of course it would. So we have all these kinds of things that, we're going to do. And I think it's going to be really good.
I've thought about on a grandchild's wedding day or firstborn great grandkid or any of those life occasions when it would be neat to have grandpa around. And up pops, and I know you got the technology to do this, up pops a video from grandpa.
It's moving, Chuck, beyond belief, because we never know as grandparents how long parents don't even know, but let's take us grandparents, because I'm definitely there. I'm on the downhill side. I have one grandson who's 6 years old. So he's the youngest. Chances of me being around when his wedding happens is pretty much next to nil.
Yeah.
But we have a real impact in their lives as if we want to be involved in their lives, right? Which I know you do in yours and I do in mine. And I'm guessing most Pinnacle people, they want to be involved in their grandkids' lives too. But you think about that you've been gone, and 5 days before their wedding, up pops a video from you, and you know exactly what you would say to them if you were at the wedding. So that's the purpose of the video. And then you can just say something when you start off about, sweetie, I love you so very much. And I'm sorry I couldn't be in attendance today, but that doesn't stop my incredible love and a special message I have for you. And can you fathom? Well, that's why you want to do it 5 days before, because if it's a girl especially, she may mess up her mascara just listening to your message. But it gives you a chance to speak again into their life way downstream and remind them that you're in heaven and you're waiting to the day that you get to help be the welcome crowd that brings them into heaven. And you pray that they'll never walk away, that they'll always keep that relationship with Jesus. So here you are, gone for years, still evangelizing, still encouraging those who we love to make sure you don't give up in that race and let Jesus slide. It's the most important thing we can do. So, I think it'll be powerful. And I'll finish with this. That is the only situation I've seen, Chuck, out of my vision that has happened where someone has truly died and they did leave message. And it was a Navy SEAL. The year was 2011, SEAL Team 6 in Afghanistan. And I'd shared with these guys about my vision. And sure enough, this E9, 25-year Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6, he, unknown to anybody, had a guy in his team film a video. And that video was 6 minutes to his wife and 4 minutes to his 2 little boys. His little boys at that time were 5 and 7. Sure enough, on that day, their helicopter was shot down on call sign Extortion 17. You can look it up. It'll tell about all the Navy SEALs, high-level Navy SEALs that were killed that day. At his funeral, it was typical Navy SEAL team, all the funeral, who the guy was. He was a real character. And at the very end, the whole room went dark. And up pops this video. And I can tell you this, there was not one dry eye in that place. Everybody moved emotional about a message that wasn't even to them. It was to his wife and to his two little boys. But that's the kind of power that we're going to have. And now you and I just got to experience a friend who should have lived for several more years, who didn't complete his life's final thoughts. He had promised his wife he was going to finish it on a Saturday. Unfortunately, on that Saturday, he would have a stroke and a car accident and never recover. And he actually invested with me. He should have made his video, but he didn't. And it made me sick because I just go, that's how we get. But we don't know the day nor the hour. And it's not a morbid thought. It's just to say, I'm going to do this today just in case anything should happen. Check that box, baby. It's done. And you got it. You log it into our system. It gets stored in your vault. And when that time for that particular video is called upon to be dispersed, you can take it to the bank. It'll be done on that day. And I just think the power as this thing grows will be huge. And to the children and grandchildren who get to hear you or me, I think they'll be moved beyond belief of saying, wow, I get called Papa, others are called Grandpa. But my two grandsons, I just took on this hike into this lake that was unreal. I'm 75, and I wanted to see if I could do it one more time. The only way my wife let me do it was with my two grandsons. They're 20 and 17. And we talked about how great it is to enjoy God's beauty and their relationship with Christ. And I just couldn't thank them enough. And we took a bunch of pictures. What they didn't know is those pictures are going into, once we have the various videos we can make, which is about a month and a half off for that, I will create 3 videos for them. But in those videos, I will hold up a picture of me with each one of them fishing in this lake and talk about catching a fish. That's kind of ironic, right? But I will tell them how very much I love them and how they bless me beyond my wildest dreams. And I want them to make sure they finish the race of life, because I can't save anybody. I wish I could, but I can't. But sharing that kind of stuff with people, Chuck, I just think will melt hearts. And for them, as they proceed down their life, I have no idea what kind of obstacles will come in their way. But I pray when my videos pop into their life, it's at a right, perfect time that God has orchestrated. And I pray my messages will reaffirm with them the most important relationship in all their lives, and that's a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Sandy, you choke me up every time I hear about the project that you're working on.
But it's real now.
Thinking how much I'd like to hear from my grandfathers, who I was very close to. And now my dad, I'd love to hear him when he was a little bit more cognizant, hear his voice and hear that kind of a message. What a thrill that would be. So this thing is up and ready to go. Is that right?
Yeah, we're on the Apple App Store with the term Life's Final Thoughts. That's the app. We will pretty soon have it all branded under Time Capsules. But for right now, our website is the www.lifesfinalthoughts.com. And it's in the Apple App Store. I'm hoping, Chuck, within a couple weeks here, I'm really hoping we have the Android piece done so that no matter what phone a person operates on, they'll be able to go on there. And just like my friend Jeff, I'd give anything if he would have had that done. And when I talked to his wife, that was her sentiments exactly. She said, I so wish he would have been able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's just part of life to remind us of why we don't put things like that off, because we don't know. Tomorrow could be my final day. That hike into that lake could have been my final day. But what I want to do is, in the military, we always called it, check that box.
Yeah.
And that's with when you had an unusual experience and maybe you didn't die that day when you thought you maybe were going to die, and you go, well, check that box, baby. I don't have to do that again to have that experience. And that's how I see on this, is I'm just going, let's check that box. Let's get this first one done. And then in short order, we will have the one where we can use for all kinds of things. And I presented even this concept to the military. They have a huge divorce problem. And I told them about utilizing this, where each of the participants in that marriage would be required to make a video. The video recording would only be from the moment they first laid eyes on that person to the point in time where they either asked them to be their spouse or they accepted. And then you stop the recording. See, I believe a lot of marriages can grow stale because they forgot that first love. They forgot when they fell in love. And I'm doing one. This is just between you and me and the Pinnacle people. But this November, when Diana's birthday comes, I am doing one that documents that video that she'll always have with her from the first day I ever saw her, of which 2 guys on my football team were pointing her out. And I remember thinking, wow, that is one beautiful gal. To the point to where I asked her if she'd consider marrying me. Now, that's debatable on the wiseness of the choice, but she got me, for better or for worse. But I just think this will be something, and it's going to be the best birthday gift I've ever given her, because she'll be able to tuck that away. And even after I'm gone, if I end up, my race time's over, she wants to be a Smucker's grandma. She's 2 years younger than me, and I don't want to be a Smucker's grandpa. So I said, well, there's a good chance you'll be listening to my video.
Yeah.
And you can imagine this person who you dedicated your life to, that you said, I love you with all my heart. You have children with. You get the benefit of grandchildren because of that. And I just don't want to forget how much I truly loved her and how lucky I was to have captured somebody like her.
Yeah. Well, Sandy, if our listeners wanted to access that, would you be better if they go to the Apple App Store or Apple App Store, or come on your website?
Well, for right now, they have to go to the Apple App Store. We will eventually have the deal where we have a link, but on a startup, I think it's been a while since I did one, and I forget all the logistics of everything. It's just a lot of work. And so we have that on our list, but it's not on the top of our list just because we're just beginning. So the easiest is just to go to the Apple App Store, and then pretty soon we'll have the Android one for the Google. And but if they want to just look and see what it's about, to give them an idea, they can go to the www.lifesfinalthoughts.com. No apostrophe on the lives.
Well, it's been good catching up with you. It's an amazing story about Diana and,
yes,
how God saved her to be able to witness to the nurses and the doctors, and her willingness to do that, not keep it a secret, and your willingness to work so hard to bring this app to fruition because you believe in it. I think your Pinnacle Forum partners have helped bring this vision to life.
They have.
So
And
being in that community has helped you fulfill what God's called you to do. And that's what
you're so right, Chuck. And I just want to put in a little pop there. As you know, when I stumbled onto Pinnacle Forum and my first visitation with you, I was in great need of heart surgery. I just didn't really know. And I'll never forget you encouraging me to join up, and actually you supported me when I had no money. I'm forever grateful. And the men that I have got to become close with, and I'm talking close, where we're not afraid to share our most intimate sins and issues, that one may truly pray that for us. And that kind of relationship is, as you know, very, very hard to find. And yet here Pinnacle has done that. So what a blessing. And I thank God every day for the uniqueness and how I even met you. That was a God thing right there. No doubt about it. Miracle, provision.
Yeah, I'm a big blessing.
You were.
Sandy, thank you. Thank you. Well, there you have it. A great story of how Pinnacle Forum has affected Sandy, and about Sandy and the near miss with his wife, and how God affected that, and an opportunity for you to check into life's final moments. And you never know. That's something I'm going to do right away.
Well, everybody has them, right? If God truly could come to each one of us and say, "Okay, Chuck, tomorrow's your day. What would you like to say?" You absolutely would have words for those you care about. You'd want to share.
Yep.
Because the biggest regrets in the world tend to come from words left unsaid. And let's don't leave this earth like that. Let's make sure we check that box.
Well, and let's not miss a last opportunity to have an impact for the kingdom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, from all of us here with Pinnacle Forum, to all of you listening out there, thank you for listening. We trust that these stories of our partners are an encouragement to you as you steward the influence that God has given you, the way Sandy continues to steward the influence that God has given him. Thank you, Sandy, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
God bless.